On the last episode, we learned how to create validations using inside our controller. So let's see what we did on the last episodes. If I go to app, HTTP controllers, on our contact as controller, you can see that you have here this request validate, right? So we did all of this on the last video tutorial where we passed the request after the form submission. And then we can validate it here inside this method on the request called validate, and then you pass the form input names, in this case name, and then required, and all the validators that you want to use. So what if we can use this on a way that instead of passing the method here, we can do it in a more, let's say, structured way by having a class that we can then inject here as a dependency. So let's see how we can do that. And in this case, in Laravel, it's called form requests. So to create a request, in this case a form request, you use the artisan command. So PHP artisan make request and then the name of it. So I'm going to just click contact as request since it's from our form. And pay attention here on the left what's going to happen. So I'm going to click and enter, and it automatically creates this requests folder with our contact as request already scaffolded to be ready to be used. So if I go back here to our Internet Explorer, to our browser, let me just pull out the window, and I write contact us / create contact us like this. So you see you have the form here, right? Exactly as we had on the previous episode. And now we have this contact us request that will reach our validation on our controller part here before actually executing the code that we have inside the controller. So for instance, I will remove this. I'm just going to the dump and die, saying, validation passed, ready to do some operations. So how can we use that? So we just do an injection here. In this case, we just inject it directly as a dependency. I call it contact as request, and then I can just call it request. And I just do an F5, and here it automatically adds here to my class namespace information. So I'm just going to do an F5, come back here. I'm going to click send information. Look what happened. It says this action is unauthorized. So this is part of another part of the Laravel that we'll learn later on. That is in this case, the authorization part. And in this contact request, and this is what I'm going to explain to you now, the first method is actually about the authorized. So can the submission actually be authorized to then validate this request and then move on or not? So this is all the logic that you can put here, okay? So for now, I'm not going to use any logic. I'm just going to say return true. So if I do an F5 again and resend information, it says validation passed, right to some operations. So where do we actually put the rules for it? We put the rules here on the zone that says function rules. So this method rules runs against the rules that you place there, and it works exactly the same way as before. So for instance, I'm going to say name, and then I'm going to pass required, just to say that it's required. So I'm go back here to our form, and I do send information, and as you can see, the name field is required. So Laravel is exactly using this logic now on the rules. See, you can just pass exactly the same as before, required string, and if you go back here and you put, well, actually I don't know, I think all of these are considered as a string. But if you again pass numeric and you do send information, it says the name must be a number. So it's validating the information that you're passing here. So as you can see, the code is much more structured. You just need to inject the dependency here, contact as request, and then run your controller action code here exactly after. Because Laravel does everything for us. It understands that we are injecting this form request that actually inherits from the request class on Laravel. So no problems on using it. So if I do here a dump and die of the request, you'll see that it has all the information there as a normal request. So see, in this case, contact as request. So it comes from it's a class app HTTP request contact us request on this case, as you already saw. And then it has all the information here that you can use, exactly the attributes here on the request itself, with the parameters, name, email, see all the information that we pass, and also much more information here that you can see. So here you will use it to validate here. You can also have another method called messages, and what it does is it will allow you to customize the message that you want to show up here. So for instance, on this case, let's say return, and then I want to say that, okay, for the name, the input type field name for the validation required, I want to say another thing. I say, hey, don't forget to fill the name on this case. And here you just return the message itself. See, so return and then name required. So you pass the input name, the name of your form name, in this case the input name that is called name. So if you go back here to our request, to our resources, sorry, and views and contact us form, so I have here the name, right? Name equals to name. So you also have the email. So for instance, you can also come here and say, well, my email needs to be the type email, and then you can, of course, saying that the email that is required, hey, don't forget to fill the email. And I just put it different so you can see. So if I go back here and then on F5, class contact us request does not exist. Made a mistake here in terms of validation, in terms of syntax. So I'm not going to put anything here. You already see there, hey, don't forget to fill the name. Hey, don't forget to fill the email. See? So you can customize the messages that you want here instead of the normal default message that comes on, that is the email field is required. You can actually ask yourself, where does these messages come from? I mean, we see here that you don't put anything here and the message just appears there, right? So if you go to the resources, to the language, you'll see that by default, Laravel already brings you some, let's say, messages or some translations that are used. And in this, by default, Laravel uses the validation PHP file here, this array, to actually, by default, translate all the type of validation rules that Laravel has by default, as you can see here. So each time there is a new validation rule, we just add here, by default, Laravel just, the person just adds here, Taylor just adds here, or the person that is actually putting the pull request adds here one more. And then you can also have default validation languages lines. Instead of going to our form request here and pass these, you can actually put here your attribute name, in this case name, and then your rule name, in this case required, and then pass the message. So Laravel will take it there. The same applies here on the attributes directly. So, I mean, as you can see, there is a lot of flexibility to do things. You can, of course, if you don't have EN and you have another one, then you can just replicate it with your language and then put the validation inside, and Laravel will use it by default if the language on your website changes. So again, in the resume, we do have here on our controller, in this case, we have we injected here a new form request class that we created using the artisan commands make requests. Then Laravel by default creates then this folder called requests and places inside. We also see that we have this authorized to use when you have authorization if you want to put some logic inside here. And then you have the rules where you actually define your rules and messages in case you need. And you just need to inject it here on your controller action, and then if it passes, the code that you have here will be executed after the validation was done. So this was a very quick episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. And then from now on, you can choose if you want to use directly the action validation on the directly on the controller action, or if you want to create on another situations the form request, that is actually my preferred approach, and have all your validations structured there and not spread around your controller's actions. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again on the next episode. Bye bye.